When Operation Barbarossa erupted in June of 1941, it did more than tear open the borders of the Soviet Union. It ripped apart the quiet, ordered life of millions. For Maria Oktyabrskaya, the war didn't arrive with tanks rolling into her street or bombs raining from the sky. It arrived in the form of a silence that stretched for 2 long years, a silence from the man she loved. And then, one day, that silence broke, not with a letter of hope, but with the cold confirmation that her husband had been cut down near Kiev in the fury of the German advance. In every documentary about the Eastern Front, there's a moment when an ordinary citizen chooses a path no one expects. This was Maria's moment. Grief didn't slow her. It narrowed her world into a single point of purpose. Every breath she took from that day forward moved toward one idea. If the war had taken her husband, she would go to the war herself. But the Red Army didn't want her. 36 years old, a woman, frail in the spine, not a fit soldier. At least not in their eyes. What they underestimated was that Maria wasn't asking for permission. She was already beginning her campaign. She started selling off pieces of her life, fabrics she had embroidered, household goods she had owned for years, even possessions with memories still attached. Every sale chipped away at the home she once built with her husband, and every ruble she collected went into shaping something new, something forged from loss. By the time she was done, Maria had gathered 50,000 rubles, enough to fund the construction of a T-34 medium tank. But it wasn't the money that stunned the authorities, it was the letter that followed it. Addressed directly to Joseph Stalin, written with the clarity of someone who had burned away doubt, she requested that the tank be named Fighting Girlfriend, and that she herself be permitted to drive it into battle. She promised she could operate machinery, fire a gun, repair what broke. She promised she would fight for her husband and for all who had fallen. Incredibly, Stalin agreed. From here, the tone of the story shifts. No longer personal tragedy, but the beginning of a military chronicle. Maria was sent to tank school, where the atmosphere was far from welcoming. Recruits muttered when she passed by. Some laughed. Many assumed she was there for photographs, not for war. But cameras weren't what Maria came for. She endured every drill, every punishment, every grueling repair task thrown at her. Mud, cold, metal, none of it discouraged her. Over time, the smirks faded. Even the most skeptical instructors began to understand that she wasn't a symbol. She was a soldier being forged. When she completed her training and reached the 26th Guards Tank Brigade in the autumn of 1943, the men expected to meet a figure of propaganda. Instead, they met a driver whose stare matched the steel plates of the machine assigned to her, painted on its turret, Fighting Girlfriend. The first time she stepped onto the battlefield came in October 1943, during the push toward Smolensk. And if this were a documentary, this is where the soundtrack would shift. Huzz tightening, engines roaring, camera shaking with each explosion. Fighting Girlfriend surged forward, and Maria drove it as if she had been born in its hull. German positions cracked under its advance. Machine gun nests shattered. Dozens of enemy soldiers fell in moments. Inside the tank, the crew exchanged glances. Not of fear, but of dawning realization that the woman they doubted was doing exactly what she said she would. Then, in a flash of smoke and steel, the tank lurched violently. The left track had been blown apart. Most tank crews stayed inside when immobilized. Maria did the opposite. She threw open the hatch and leapt onto the battlefield. Bullets shredded the ground around her. Artillery thundered overhead. But she moved with urgent precision, dragging the weight of spare track links with her. kneeling in the dirt, forcing steel into place with bare, shaking hands. Her commander yelled for her to get back inside. She didn't even look up. She finished the repair under a storm of gunfire, climbed back into the driver's seat, and drove fighting girlfriend straight back into combat. The brigade never doubted her again. In the weeks that followed, Maria's tank became something of a legend among the Soviet lines. It crushed German artillery, scattered defensive lines, and lifted morale simply by rolling into position. Her crew fought with renewed conviction, not because of speeches, but because every time they faced the enemy, Maria was in the front seat, pushing forward no matter the danger. Radio operators across the front repeated her commander's words, "Fight like the crew of Fighting Girlfriend." But every documentary also carries the turning point: no hero can outrun. In January 1944, on the frozen front of Belarus, the brigade moved under cover of night. Their ammunition was running low. The Germans, entrenched and determined, launched a fierce counterattack. Fighting Girlfriend rushed into the darkness again, smashing through positions, silencing machine gun nests, buying precious minutes for infantry behind them. Then, just like before, the tank jolted violently. A direct hit smashed its track. Maria opened the hatch. The cold was brutal, the air full of smoke and sparks. She climbed out anyway, gripping the metal that had nearly frozen to her gloves. She bent over the broken track, working as fast as she could. Her crew provided covering fire from the turret, shouting for her to move faster, to get down, to get back in. She didn't respond. A burst of shrapnel sliced through the night and struck her in the head. Maria collapsed onto the shattered earth beside the tank she had resurrected so many times. Her crew dragged her back amid chaos and carried her under fire to the nearest aid station. From there, she was moved to a hospital, drifting in and out of faint consciousness. For 2 months, she lay silent, unmoving, suspended between war and the world she once knew. On March 15, 1944, the woman who had bought a tank with her grief and driven it into legend took her final breath. She was 38. After her death, the Soviet Union awarded her the title Hero of the Soviet Union, its highest honor. Fighting Girlfriend was eventually destroyed in battle, but the symbolism of the tank and the woman who insisted on sitting in its driver's seat outlived its steel.
Her story has since become one of the most striking accounts of personal vengeance turned into military action. Not a myth, not a morale tale. A real woman, shaped by love and loss, who chose to answer tragedy not with surrender, but with fire. In every documentary about the Eastern Front, certain names appear among the endless ruins and statistics. Maria Oktyabrskaya is one of them. A reminder that sometimes history is changed not by generals, but by someone who simply refuses to break.